Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplants. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week, we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support the podcast by leaving a 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story to share? Love to hear from you or comments about the podcast. Just email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast, as we welcome you to episode 48. This week, we introduce you to Sam Day. He's known about heart disease his entire life with a father and brothers, all with heart problems. But his problems began in 2008. Sam believes stress had a lot to do with it. He was a workaholic and traveling the world. It all started with a heart attack, and suddenly his life changed. His story will amaze and inspire you. Tune in now for a story of strength and love and the incredible impact of organ transplantation. We'll be back with Sam Day next. As we're talking with Sam today, he is a heart recipient, which I'm excited to always talk to someone with a heart. But first of all, Sam, if you could, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself today?
Well, hi, BJ. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I am a heart recipient, but my story goes way back. But we can get into that in a bit. But I live in the Maryland area. 2 grown kids, 2 wives. Basically, right now it's my wife and I and our little 4-year-old little Jack Chihuahua. Sorry, not 4-year-old, 4-legged 9-year-old Jack Chihuahua. His name's Jay, and he's obviously our son. And so my daughters are grown up. One's 26 and a special ed teacher, settled in West Virginia. And the other is actually going to graduate from undergrad this May. So we're all excited about that. And she's doing pre-med biology. So that's a big, long ride ahead. She wants to go to vet school. And our pockets are empty. But she's going to have to fend for herself mostly for grad school, which is what people should be doing, anyway. You can get loans or, grants and all this stuff. But so that's our story, and we've been in this area probably for about, give or take, like 12, 13 years. And prior to that, I was in Michigan for several years. Prior to that, in Massachusetts, all the M states, you see. And before that, I guess I was actually born in an N state, Nebraska, many eons ago, because my dad used to travel around and he was doing his graduate work there. And then, believe it or not, we actually moved back to India, because that's when my parents were born. And so I've been in both places. I've been to schools in both places. So I guess I've picked up a bit of culture from there, culture from here, a bit of a mixed mutt. And then we've lived in England too for a while.
Oh, wow.
But so we've been around a little bit, and mostly because of my nomad dad, and he wasn't in the services or anything. He would just start up ventures, he's very entrepreneurial. And, but, so that's old news. But right now it's just my mom and I. We were a family of 5. I lost 2 brothers, one back in 2008. And one in 2009, and he was only 33. We lost him due to sudden cardiac death. And then my middle brother, he had already had dealing with MS and kidney failure, and he basically, didn't want to be sick anymore, so he also passed away sadly in 2022, actually, so not that long ago. So now it's just my mom and I because we lost my dad in also in 2022 in the early part of the year. So my mom lives with us now because she's getting up there in age. So it's my wife, my mom, little Jay, and I, because the kids are out. It's like an empty nest, and these days the kids hardly visit and stuff. I mean, we have to get on the calendars to coordinate a visit. So,
I know how that is. I have kids
how many
up.
kids do you have?
You know what? We almost, in a way, have pretty close lives. Although I haven't, traveled around as much as you.
Hmm.
But I've got a boy, I've got a girl,
Uh-huh.
and they are both
Uh-huh.
out on their own. And I have a wife, the second wife, like
Uh-huh.
you, and
Uh-huh.
a
Uh-huh.
little doggy at home. So we're pretty
Oh,
much leading the same lives.
yeah, right. But any what you call it, any grandkids yet, or not yet?
Yeah, I got a couple grandkids, and believe it or not,
See, you're ahead.
they're
Yeah.
already older too, though. They're like 17 and 22. So
Oh, wow, wow. Pretty soon they'll be happy. You'll be a great grandfather.
let's not go there right
Let's not
now.
go too far ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
glad to have you on the show today. And
Thank you.
if you would, I know, yours was a heart, but we all have different
Yes.
stories and they all start different
Oh,
ways.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I did notice you say you had a brother that passed, unfortunately, from heart
Two,
problems,
two brothers.
but
Yeah, yeah.
both from
One
heart.
from heart, and the other second one also complications with the heart after being ill. With MS and kidney failure and then dialysis and all this stuff.
Now,
So,
is that kind of how your story began, or was it
not
hereditary, or
really,
what
and
happened?
not really. It's also as far as family history. You know how important family history is for all of us. We have to really take that into account and stuff like that. Family history wise, my dad, when he was younger, he did have a heart attack related to a pulmonary issue. So he got this innovative surgery where they make holes in your heart, like a little tiny TMR, they used to call it. It didn't really make it in the mainstream, but he was one of those people who signed and said, okay, I'll be a trial, and then all this stuff, and it actually worked for many decades. He had it done at Washington Hospital Center. And it was just these little holes they do, and over time those form the little capillaries, so the heart starts to revive, basically. So it was pretty innovative, and I'm surprised it didn't make it. Maybe funding or something like that. But so as far as heart health, I mean, history-wise, there's not too much of heart disease in our family. But in my case, so I was very gainfully employed in all the states that I lived in and all this stuff, and so my brother had what you may call it in 2008, actually we have to go back to. That's when suddenly I had a heart attack. It was like I was trying to get ready for work and everything, and then that morning, I was up early, me getting ready for meetings. Quite a stressful job. So before I go anywhere, I'm just going to say stress plays a huge role in all ailments. I'm just saying it a blanket thing because it's not so tangible, measurable, but stress of any kind really will cause problems for our health. So in my case, I was very, very stupidly workaholic. Okay, and I used to work in IT management and teams all over the world. Coordinating different time zones and super active. I used to work at GM in Detroit, and it was just a hectic lifestyle. I'd fall asleep at the rent and the headquarters. Sometimes I had to just take calls in the middle of the night, get up, 2 hours of sleep, all bad stuff. Eat at bad times because hey, there was no time to eat, and I had two little kids at the time, and I wanted to get any of my free time. I wanted to give to them. So at the time I told my wife, ex-wife now, I told her, you stay home and you give him time because I'm not able to at all. And so I missed out a lot, growing up and stuff, but whatever I could, I did. Like I used to role play with them. My older daughter used to always make me a student. I was always in class. I was always the bad guy who didn't behave. And she sent letters home with me to go make sure I tell my parents. My parents had to sign it. The whole bit, lesson plans. And my younger daughter, Maya, she was, the other student who was a good student. I was the bad influence, you know. And she had a full name for me too. It was Finn Chucky. So I don't know how she picked that up or whatever, but Finn Chucky, you've been really bad. Da 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 da. Time out. This that. Homework right on the board. You will not do this so many times, and so it was fun for me. That I was getting to spend time with them, and oddly enough, not oddly, I mean, I'm so happy that my older daughter pursued what was her passion, and she became a special ed teacher. And so that's really gratifying. And obviously, when I got sick and ill, it was like, will this happen? Will this happen? So that's one of the good things I was able to see because I'm alive today, due to my amazing donor hero and the donor family. And, it's so grateful to so many people. But anyway, so back to my story. So I got sick, had a massive heart attack. And there's a little backstory to that. I was trying to work it out because I didn't think it was a heart attack. And sometimes, we don't always get those symptoms that everyone said, oh, yeah, you had pain on your left side and your jaw, and, you'll feel something, you'll feel a heavy thing on your chest. So I wasn't feeling any of that, right? For me, I thought it was some digestive issues. And I was like having heartburn and popping Rolaids and showering and a lot of discomfort, but nothing like, oh my gosh, what's happening right now? So I tried to actually work it out for hours. I was up early, but at least 4 or 5 hours I was dealing with this stuff, showering many times and stuff like that. But then eventually, I guess I got smart suddenly, and I said, something's wrong. So I told my wife at the time, I said, do you mind taking me to the hospital? I don't feel so good. And she's like, you mean now? I'm like, yeah, right now, because I'm like, well, because she's like, well, my friend's coming over. I'm like, all right, well, I could try to take an Uber. She's like, no, let me just rearrange and with a friend. And she's like, all right, let's go. And we were living in Michigan at the time, very close to the hospital, actually. So she tries to drive me to the hospital, and on the way she stops, pulls over into the school. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm feeling really sick and bad. She's like, oh no, the older girl forgot her jacket, so I'll just drop it off in the school. And I'm like, what? At the time, I'm like hardly being able to say anything. I'm like, okay, I'll just wait and die here. So she went in, dropped the jacket off, and then I finally went to the ER. The thing is, it was like a 3-minute ride. So I got there, and she parks way the heck over on the other side. It's a bright, sunny day. I'm like, okay, I was asked to take me to ER. Could he just drop me off in the front of the ER? Oh, no. Parking way the heck out there. So I walked. She was walking behind me or something. I walked in, went into the ER, big sign. As soon as I entered, boom, collapsed. And that was it. And next thing moment, I know people are all over me and being like, "Here's some water. Sir, are you okay? You're having a heart attack." I'm like, what? I was still not fully out, right? So then obviously they revived me, and it was all scary. And so then they took me in and stuff, and they said, "Oh, we can't do much here. We'll stabilize you and send you to the bigger hospital." I'm like, okay, that was by ambulance. And then so they actually ended up putting in three stents because three of my arteries were like 85-90% clogged. And that obviously was a result of all the stress and the bad eating habits and the bad sleep health and just sedentary lifestyle, not having time to do anything, eating at restaurants late at night, and all of that stuff. So whatever, I wasn't going to analyze. I'm just like, just get me fixed so I can go back to work and to my family. And stenting these days, medicated stents. I was out in 3 days. So I'm like, cool, that was a good save. And they said, rest like 5 days and you'd be fine to go back to work and stuff. And I did. So it was just going on. Fast forward, the job was, stressful, and then I kept doing the work, and then I got a new job offer. So I'm like, I have to go and check out some stuff in India because there was teams in India, so I had to go meet the team and stuff like that. And my boss was like, "Are you available to go?" I said, "Yeah, sure," because I was feeling fine. I had lost weight, and there was less fluid on board, and I didn't really know much about. Oh, also, I it was discovered I had diabetes at that time, so obviously that made a huge difference to the heart failure and all this stuff. So all that happened. So I went to India for work and came back. This was 2008. I came back in 2009 only to find out that my youngest brother had a sudden cardiac death event. So he and I actually we weren't twins, but we were born on the same day, 6 years apart. So that took a big hit on me, and we were really close. And so he passed away, um, oddly, 2 days after our birthday. May 24th. So that whole thing. So our birthdays now. My birthday is just bittersweet because of one birthday, and then how are you going to celebrate someone's life the next day. So that happened, and I was upset because he didn't see what had happened to me, and somehow he just let it slip, and it's God's timing, I believe, but it happened. So I was then still going back and forth to India, but when I was there in 2009, I got served divorce papers. So across all the oceans and stuff. And that also happened to be in April. April was when I had my heart attack the previous year. And April again, this time she served me papers because it wasn't working out, blah blah blah. So I came back and we did the whole divorce court stuff. It was a battle. I was sick, and she obviously wanted custody. And but even in those days, I guess in Michigan, I was able to convince the judge and stuff that, look, I need them for my recovery too. It's not like, and I told him how involved I was and this and that. So we engaged lawyers and things like that, but it was just like, you know, it was a fight for no reason, I would think. But anyway, she ended up getting custody, as most women do. And I had visitation, um, things like that. So I was getting sicker, 2009. And then again, I went back because I had to now, still do my job. But later in 2009, I got a pink slip because my company, they had some issues with fiscal reporting and this and that. There was a big scandal, and they fired a lot of people who were on these big U.S. accounts and stuff like that. So all the senior people asked to leave. So I was kind of stuck in the middle, and so I tried to make a go of it. I'm like, at least I didn't have citizenship of India or anything, but I could be there on a permanent visa. So I had access to jobs there based on what I had been in the industry and stuff like that. So I was trying to work deals there or get a job and stuff. And I got sicker while there. And it turns out I was actually stuck there for 5 years. I couldn't come back. Wasn't strong enough to travel. Constantly went to the hospital and saw doctors there. Good doctors, and some of the nurses are okay, nursing staff, but then the U.S. is a way better system overall.
That's what I was going to ask you,
Um,
how they compare. But
yeah, so especially the aftercare, U.S. takes the cake. And you can get good doctors, the competitive. As even now here, you see a lot of Asian doctors and stuff. They're all top notch.
mhm.
So that part wasn't bad. So in India, though, during those 5 years, they were just keeping me alive on meds. So I was diagnosed with proper full-on congestive heart failure and constant fluid retention. So constantly having to go to the hospital to get tapped and they would drain fluid out from the back, from my lungs in the back, and all kinds of stuff. Like always, just hospital, hospital, hospital. So then in 2010, it was so bad. I ended up having a quadruple bypass in India. So so I got to see the whole surgical and aftercare and all that stuff. Obviously, it was a good hospital because in India there's a huge um, gap between poverty and people who are middle class and upper class and all this stuff. So in my case, I was lucky. I was in a hospital, but those hospitals there, they're not like the U.S. and stuff. I mean, you got to put the cash up front, then they'll treat you. So it's like, yes, you have half of it. Well, we'll have to wait for the procedure then. That kind of really bad stuff. So I was in bad shape. I was visiting doctors all over the country, well-known doctors, and they don't want to touch me. They were like, we don't know, you can have another um, bypass or whatever, but it won't do you any good. You're in full heart failure, left and right heart. So best option for you is to, since you're a citizen, try to go back to the U.S. And I was like, yeah, that's easy said, but I can't really go. Excuse me. They said, I mean, they do heart transplants in India, but very few. And obviously, there's also a waiting list there. And it's just, I wouldn't be comfortable, I guess, having it done there, knowing a little bit about. I wasn't read up on all the transplant stuff. I didn't ever think I'd need one. But and that's when I started my research and stuff. And then I figured out I could have gone to Singapore where they do more, and doctors from all over the world go there and blah blah blah. But that's like here nor there. There's nobody, right? It's a completely different place. So in the meantime, I was divorced, right? 2009, later that year, it got finalized. So I was divorced, not living with my kids, and I met somebody there in India. And this person ended up being my angel, my wife, Viji. And so I met her, and then it clicked. And first of all, the biggest mystery was uh, we asked each other, you know how you do it in initial dates. What's your date? When were you born? What month? What sign? All this stuff. She was born in May. She was born on May 22nd. That's the same day as me.
Oh,
And
wow.
also same day as my late youngest brother. So I'm like, what the heck is this? I didn't expect something like this. And initially, after she met my parents and stuff, and my mom's like, "Oh, it's divine intervention, and your brother set this up, and all this stuff." I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of freaky, Anyway, when we met the next day, we were chatting on Facebook or something, and she actually didn't know my birth date. How in Facebook you can say the day and the month. So when she opened her profile, there was a friend request waiting for her from me. So she looked at it, and then she looked at my profile, and she's like freaked out, shut the laptop down because it was the same day and month. So she's like, "Is this guy scamming me? What's going on?" So I mean, eventually, like when we actually met in person, we on purpose we went to like a coffee shop or something, where they were having like a special, for your birthday you get a free coffee or something. This is in India, and we're like, yeah, we'll both take a free coffee. And the server's like, what? You guys are definitely not related, not twins. So I said, okay, let's show our IDs. And that was like kind of funny. The guy was like, he was like taken aback. He's like, wow, I didn't expect that. But so that's all that was happening. And then do you need a break? Because I've been going nonstop. You want to ask me something,
No,
BJ?
I'm just sitting here listening. I guess now. So then, what? You brought her?
So we fast forward, we got into a relationship. And then so she kind of by default became a caregiver right off the bat, and so her personality was so I don't know the word. She was an angel to me. Like she knew all my baggage. She knew all about my baggage, right? And she was single, not married ever. She knew I had kids. She knew I had like a ready-made family. She knew I had all these health issues. She did not imagine I would ever need a transplant, but she knew all this stuff. She knew divorce and the custody and all these issues. I was jobless at the time. So in spite of knowing all that, she pursued it, and we basically got engaged. And then the next step was to figure out how to get back to the U.S. because I wasn't getting better health wise, so I was deteriorating many times. The doctors would pull her aside and say, "I hope you're prepared," things like that. It's really not looking good. So somehow, in 2013, I was like having these syncope episodes. You just fall, blank out, and fall. And I guess the signaling between the brain and the heart wasn't really working either. So I would have constant blackouts and this and that everywhere. Like if you can imagine, if you've ever been or read about India, it's just people, 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 people everywhere. So if you're in a busy square or something, imagine falling in the middle of the street. Like hundreds of people would come on and basically surround you and give you no air and really want to help. Everyone's pouring water and stuff. I had many such incidents. So at one of those incidents, my wife's like, let's just go to take you to a ER type of place, hospital. And then I went there, and the specialist who saw me, is like, "You can't go anywhere without getting a device implanted." So it happened to be a CRTD device, which is like a combination of an ICD and a pacemaker, a resynchronization device, because some of my electrical stuff was off.
Mhm.
And had I had these falls constantly and nothing to shock me, I probably wouldn't have made it up in one of those times. So I agreed and had that device done. And so then finally we planned, let's try to head back to the US. That's the only hope. So that, visas and stuff took a bit. But in April of 2014, we finally came back home. Now, coming back home, I didn't have a home to go to, right? Because we were divorced here, and she had moved on and was living with her parents in Albany, New York, my ex. And, so my brother at the time, who passed away in 22, him and his family were living here in Maryland. So we decided it's better to go somewhere where there's some family, we can get a little help to get settled, because we'd need a place,
Yeah.
even if it's to go to hospitals and stuff like that. So we had a house, a rented house right next to theirs. And so it was going good for the first month, and I was feeling better. I thought it was the clean air because there's a lot of pollution in India. It affects everything. So I'm like trying to move around, and it's working. But then I should have known better. I didn't just get cured magically. So I still had the CHF, and it all came back rather quickly. So within a month, I was back in hospitals in the U.S. So I was going to Washington Hospital Center at the time. That was one of the best ones around here. And they were treating me at the Cardiac Institute, heart failure, advanced heart failure institute. And it was going well as far as treatments. And then finally they said the word, "You're going to need a transplant." I'm like, what? What's that? And all this more research, and really figured out, there's going to be a wait. There's no guarantees, and so fear sets in, and I was afraid. And I'm like, I don't really want to go through that. Let's just see other options. And for heart patients, the only option really is those ventricular assisted devices, the LVAD,
Yes.
and also the mechanical heart sometimes, which is, and it used to be pretty big back then, and you couldn't really move around much. So, I mean, it was limited in any way, but then they ruled out the LVAD for me, said you can't get one because you have a left and right heart failure. So I'm like, okay, I guess we'll have to start evaluation for transplant. And in the meantime, uh, there were no jobs, right? I didn't have a job. My wife didn't have a job. So my parents contacted Medicaid in the state and filed for Medicare in anticipation of needing something. So I got Medicaid because of my situation. Zero income, basically, no Social Security or anything. I was, in my 40s. So and exhausted almost all our savings because of paying for kids and stuff, even while being overseas, taking care of rents and this and that. So whatever, we were penniless. At least we had a home, and then got Medicaid, and so in the evaluation, they sent me over to Northern Virginia, which is the Innova, the other transplant center. So we're lucky in this area. We have one, two, three, four big centers. So one is in D.C., one is in Northern Virginia, and two are in Maryland. So I was living in Maryland, so I got the state-funded Medicaid for Maryland. So when they sent me to the Northern Virginia one, they evaluated me. They said, "Oh yeah, you definitely need a heart transplant. We can list you, but guess what? Your insurance won't work here." I'm like, "Oh." So after going through the workup and everything, they said, "Okay, I'll refer you to someone in Maryland, at the University of Maryland, in Baltimore, and they should be able to hook you up." So I went in there. I remember 22nd of December in 2014. So a few days before Christmas, my wife and I walked in there, and I met my other angel that day, Dr. Feller, and she was a very quick appointment. She looked at me and said, "Well, there's not much to see and do here. We're gonna have to admit you today." I'm like, "What? You didn't even check me out, really?" So she's like, and I'm looking at my wife. I'm like, "Hey, it's gonna be Christmas. I'm not staying in a hospital." And she's like, "What are you going to do? Party? There's nothing to do. You're sick. And what are you going to do?" I mean, so I said, I just want to be home for Christmas. And I was stubborn. And then I looked at Dr. Feller and said, I begged. And she and my wife connected with their rolling eyes. And then finally, she said, "Okay, make me a promise. You'll be back on the 26th. And we take it from there." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you know me. I'll keep my promises and all this stuff." So we left that day. And of course, mind you, I'm doing the driving because my wife, who had just basically fresh off the boat come over from India with me month or two before, didn't have a license or anything. She had a permit though. So she wasn't comfortable driving on the highways, going to Baltimore, DC, and all these cities. So I was, driving all sick and swollen and fat, um, and out of breath and all of those things. But so I went home Christmas Day, very quiet, obviously, nothing going on, just the two of us. And so 26th rolls around and she's like, early morning, she's like, "Okay, let's go." I'm like, "Where are we going?" She's like, "We're going. We made a promise. You made a promise. Gonna have to go." I'm like, "Come on. We're home. It's her house. Here's my bed. And meanwhile, I can't move from one bed to the couch. So she's like, "Look at you. You're like, you can't even do anything. Let's go." She's like, "No." I've been like, "No, no, no," trying to convince her. "Okay, we'll go next week, this, that." She's like, "Nothing doing." So she insisted, got me in the car. Of course, I had to drive. Then we went to Dr. Fellow's office, and she was like, "Oh, hi, you made it." And VG's like, "Oh, yeah, he didn't just make it. He had to be forced." So, all right, so let's go. And she had the paperwork ready to get me in. So I didn't even think I was going to be admitted. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 days, they'll do some testing and then go home and get on this waiting list thing. She had me in there, did all the workup, and I got listed within a month, right, while in there. And there was no signs of going home. So as it turns out, I was there for 7 months. So when I went in December, I didn't get out till July with a heart, So I was in there sick and, getting tapped and this and that. So I got to know everybody, all the nurses of the family. And VG was staying with me the whole 7 months inside the hospital. And they brought her a recliner, and they would give her meals and all this stuff. But it was going fine. Christmas was over. Obviously, New Year's was over. Easter came by. As Super Bowl came by, we had a family came over, brothers and stuff. And we watched in one of the conference room of that unit. We hooked up a TV and watched the Super Bowl, and then Easter came by, and that's when suddenly and I was in this meantime I was loopy and I was losing my mind. Right, I was so depressed. I'm like, I want to go home. I want to go home. And doctor had already told me it's either hospice or here. You don't have like more than 4 months or less to make it.
Now, how did that
So at
feel
the
when they told
time,
you
I'm
that?
like, yeah. So I was like, oh man, well, I still want to go home. I was really, really determined. So I texted my doctor. I said, I know you explained to me, but I can't handle it. I want to go home and die. So my wife is like scared and I'm scared, and it's a scary situation anyway. And my parents from a distance, they were in the area, and they would stop by every day, and they were like all disturbed and crying and stuff. And then, so finally, when Dr. Feller didn't respond, I'm like, what's going on? Why is she responding? I'd expected a, visit like the next day, what are you talking about and all this. So she was actually sending people to my room, different backgrounds. Some were just techies, some were whatever, some were neurologists, some were all kinds of people, some were just nurses. Their job was to talk to me and talk me out of this state of mind. And I was seeing the therapist at the hospital and everything. So it was going along, and I was in my mind. I'm like, I guess I've waited so long. I'd already waited 4 months in the hospital by then, almost 5 months. I said, I'll just wait, I guess. I was the only one around in the whole unit. Patients would come and go, and I'd meet them, and then the next day they'd be like, out of the hospital, checked out. Oh, everything's good. So the transplant floor was getting like just me, and then all these people would come and go. So it was getting more and more depressing. And then I'm like, I didn't want to do anything. I said, fine, I'll just stay in my room. And then one night I was taking care of some paperwork, like bills and stuff, because, we weren't at home at all, and all these bills were coming. And so I was just doing that stuff just to pass time. And so this bank guy calls me, Mr. Day, you have some overdue um, fees and this and that, and we're going to have to cut your account off. And I'm like, explaining, arguing, begging with this guy, I'm dying, and you're telling me about my accounts and this and that. And he's like, oh, no, no, we're sorry you're sick and this and that. So we're talking. And VG's like, the hospital, I keep wanting to say hotel because it was a really nice room, but the hospital phone rang, and she picks it up, and she's like, hey, it's Dr. Feller on the line. I said, can she wait a few minutes because I'm almost done with this guy on the bank. So she's like, what? So I kind of, okay. Then I saw her look, and I'm like, okay. I told the guy, can you just give me 1 second? I want to deal with this other person. So I had him on hold. Okay. And then I just put the phone down with my cell phone. That's your hospital phone. And Dr. Feller was on the other side. Hey, what's going on? I said, I'm just existing and all this stuff. So she's like, well, I heard you want to leave. I said, yeah, but you know what? I've reconciled. I'll just stay. I've stayed so long. She's like, well, that's good to hear because tomorrow, 7:30 a.m., I want to see you in the OR. We have a perfect heart for you. Oh my gosh, that moment was, everyone was, and when I say everyone, all the nurses who were just outside in the stations, they came in, barged in, because they knew that was the call being transferred to the room, right? And I had gotten close to all of them. It was like family. They all came in, Mr. Day, oh, we knew this day would come and all this stuff. I'm like, whoa. I was in shock, crying and yelling. Everyone's like, I'm like, it's 9 p.m. There's other patients. They're like, oh, no, no. They close the door and like, this is it. We've been praying and waiting for this day and all this stuff. So yeah, I was really excited and emotional and everything else. And then, so once the nurses left, I'm like, meanwhile, the guy is still on hold, mind you, the bank guy. So, all this hoopla. And then so then it set in, and I'm like, okay, I guess got to call the parents and tell them. So I called my mom at 10 o'clock at night or something. I said, guess what, Mom? They found a heart. What? I said, they found a heart for me. Oh no. I'm like, what do you mean, oh no, Mom? Type of thing. No, but I'm all prepped for a colonoscopy in the morning.
Oh gosh.
like, I'm like, I'm like, that's fine, Mom. You don't have to come. She's like, no, no, no. What do I do? What do I do? I'm like, I don't know. Call the doctor. And they'll tell you what to do. So, she did call the doctor. They said, just reverse, just eat. And, and so they came by at 3 a.m. or whatever. And so from then on, it was just this strange excitement, but also fear. And it did for me, luckily. There's dry runs and things like that. So for me, luckily, it went through. And I completely trusted my doctor, when she said it was a perfect match, I totally believed it. It's not like a kidney and stuff where, they share numbers and figures and you decide, you contemplate, is this the one I want? I was taking this heart no matter what. I'd also signed about whether or not I would accept a high risk heart. Sometimes if they don't know the history of the patient, sometimes they may have even been incarcerated for even one day, but that makes it a high risk heart,
Yeah.
And of course, there's other people who do drugs for a bit, and or HIV and Hep C. So all these things now they can transplant and also fix, So I was aware of those things. So I was just taking the first heart that was offered to me, and so it was a super heart. After 11 hours, the surgeons came out and said everything went well. And that's the thing, it was a risky case. So in the hospitals, you know how every week the team meets, to discuss who can be, if we get offers, who would be eligible,
Yeah. Now I've got to ask you
and
something
that time.
too. With you being in the
Yeah.
hospital and
Yeah.
sick that long,
Uh-huh.
when you woke up, were you a new man? Because I remember, of course, with my heart, I was sick from
Uh-huh.
birth. And so when I
Ah,
I, I woke up, it was like a miracle. Like I was a whole new man. Of course, the
absolutely.
prednisone kind of, that put you on a new high
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah,
But how did you
yeah.
feel when you woke up
Oh
and
my
you
gosh.
go,
So after, I was, my intubation was over and all this stuff. And the first thing I heard from people is, "Oh my God, look at your color." You have such poor circulation and all this stuff. You literally are in a different state overall, physically and mentally. And I was just like, energy, energy. I had everything. And of course, at the time, you were all hooked up to a billion things and you can't really move well, but I wanted to move. I'm like, and in the hospitals, they want you to walk soon. I mean, not like the first hour or anything, but I was like, I'm hungry and I got to move. And I'm like, but then I also found out that because of the diabetes, I already had compromised kidneys. So my kidneys weren't like reacting well the first hour or two. So they brought the green machine and I was actually put on dialysis for a few hours. Thank goodness it wasn't any longer than that. But
hmm
and then I was just a new man, like you said, new man, new feelings, new thoughts. I'm like, miracle. So these, I these days I have a little, I haven't, it's just my thing that I made up with hashtags, hashtag organ donation plus hashtag transplantation equals hashtag miracles 100%. So I'm a big believer in that. So that really, to me, speaks to how much organ donation makes a difference, and how lucky and how small a number are actually end up being lucky, So I studied a lot after, but just fast forward past the hospital days. Unfortunately, I ended up staying another 3.5 months in the hospital because of silly infections and stuff like that. And I had to, when I left, when they released me, they gave me I don't know if you're familiar, they gave me one of those vac machines. So if there's an open wound, it keeps
Okay.
sucking out the juices. And so I had to wear that like a LVAD bag. I went home with it for another 3 months. Huge gaping wound on my chest. It couldn't be stitched, it was really tight or something. So it had to heal like that. So that was all risky for a long time. And then my wife became a nurse at home because she had to administer antibiotics through IV. So we're doing all those things. So basically, my hospital stay extended to overall between the home and the house for like 9 months. And but once those things were done, I was so full of energy. And of course, prednisone does do some of that, gives you that energy. I was in the house cleaning out cabinets, and I'm like, oh, this is expired, this is done, clean this, clean that, constantly active. And before I couldn't move around. And this freaked my wife out actually. And she's like, what are you doing? I mean, she'd heard all the instructions, take it easy and slow recovery and all this stuff. And it came to a point where she was rendered useless. She was this caregiver for so many years and stuff. And I was like, oh, I can do that, do this. What do you want to eat? Da, da, da. All this stuff, right? And she's like, she got depressed from, she's like, he doesn't need me. And then we set it up so she could get some counseling because she's like, what do I do? He's just, I'm feeling useless. So that was a side effect too. I mean, a lot of people don't see that, how the caregiver can really get impacted. And as caregiver burnout, all that's real. So, but still, it was a success story right from the beginning. As soon as I was transplanted, I had the energy, and the first thing I wanted to do was fight for my kids because I wanted, to be able to see them regularly and stuff. And I hadn't been able to because of all these illnesses. And they were living in Albany. I was in Maryland. So I went to court and stuff. As soon as I was able to put on a suit, I went that year, and then we met up in that late that year. And from then on, I've been able to do so much more. Uh, Teaching them how to drive. That's a small thing to a lot of people, but to me, teaching my daughters how to drive, attending high school graduations, attending college graduations for one of them, and then I will be this May for the second one. So all these things are little things, but a huge accomplishment for me. And also being involved in the transplant community. So I really got dug in, and I wanted to learn more about the donation side. So I started working with our local OPO, which is the Organ Procurement Organization. Um, and I was helping them. I reached out to them and said, how can I help? And I said, oh, yeah, we have some volunteering. You can do stuff envelopes. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that stuff so much. I mean, I do. I'll do tabling events as an ambassador, a volunteer and all. But I really want him to get involved and learn and stuff. So then they presented an offer like you can be a special training person my job would be to engage in skits and scenarios and stuff like that to train the staff of the OPO, about transplantation and organ donation and all this stuff, basic stuff, teach them about those myths and real world stuff, because they know about, on the clinical side, they know it, but they don't really, some people come from other industries can do a job, like they might have a master's in teaching or something, and they work at the OPO, but they don't know much about the actual organ donation and how it is done and what the figure numbers are, statistics, and how it ends up saving lives and transplants. So I learned all about that, and that was super fascinating for me. And when I started speaking at engagements, I would always bring in both those aspects, and it made sense to me, like a full circle. I learned that when you register for organ donation, of course, it doesn't mean that you will be picked to go and someone will need your organ or you'll have to give your organ. You register because one time, it could be someone in your family who needs it, and then they're looking for people who are registered donors, and everything has to match. The criteria has to match. So for an organ donor to be able to donate, how it's a big pool.
Yeah.
Say, 60% of the state is registered. But guess what? At the hospital, when there's a mishap or a tragedy, there's only a handful of people, right? So
Right.
that number whittles down. And then among those, you have people who have registered. Among those, you have people who have viable organs to donate. So the number gets smaller and smaller into like a number that's 2% of everyone who's registered and available. So imagine, and then over that, you have to be on a ventilator, you have to be declared brain dead, or decide it's a DCD donation. So the number is tiny. So when people get transplanted, it is a miracle in my book. Because how else would we still be here? You know, um, so I advocate a lot for that, and I try to living in DC. I try to do some advocacy, going to some of these lobby days and stuff like that. And I don't limit myself to the heart. I advocate for all
Yeah.
organ donation and transplantation. A lot of kidney stuff, obviously, because of the numbers, and trying to improve living donation. It's getting there, but it's still not. Like only 7,000 living donor transplants were done last year or something like that.
Hey,
So that's a
Sam,
small number. Yeah.
I was wondering too, because, if you're working in this field and,
Hmm.
you're learning more and more every day,
Hmm.
we're running out of time here today, as you've told your
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
but I wonder if there's a chance for us to bring you back and have you
Sure.
talk more about that side of it,
That side of the story. Yeah.
because really, in all honesty, on this program, we've covered every
Recipient side.
transplant you can
Yeah.
imagine.
Hmm.
But I think it would be good not only for the audience, but for
Hmm.
a lot of us that have received the
Yeah.
gift of
Actually, I've
life.
seen a lot of people don't, some don't want to know, but some really don't know. And then there are some who know a little bit, on the organ donation side, because we're all grateful, but it happened for a reason and a process and all this stuff. So definitely, I'd love to be back, and I really appreciate you having me on. And I'm sorry I talk so much,
Oh, no
like
problem.
nonstop.
A guy that's been in the broadcast business for a long time, and we
Yeah.
always joke about it. Like sometimes you'll do an interview and you'll get like one word answers, and you're going, okay, next question, next question. So really, you made my job.
So it becomes like a prepped thing, and yeah,
So
yeah.
you made my job extremely easy today. But I
Thank
would
you. I'm just
love.
used to sharing my story. Yeah. Most of the time, I get 5 minutes, BJ. So sometimes I get more, and I'm like, there's a lot to it,
Yeah.
different angles and stuff like that. But I have to cater my speeches to the audience, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if it's a room full of nurses, I'll talk to them. If it's a high school kids, I'll talk to them that way and stuff like that. So I love sharing my story and speaking about it, and telling people how much. And I want to do it internationally because I have all these connections in India, and kidney disease and stuff is rampant. I mean, way more than what it is here, right? Imagine the difference in population itself.
Right.
So in magnitude, it's crazy,
And that's
and there's different rules.
what's
Yeah.
amazing about doing podcasts too. Like when I was on the radio,
Yeah.
you were heard in an area or a region,
Yeah.
but
Right.
there's because I can see the data from the podcast, and we have people from
Uh-huh.
all over the world that listen to the
Right.
podcast, and
Awesome.
on a daily basis, we get about 10,000 individuals that will, I don't know what, it's
Sweet.
different episodes and stuff, but we get about
Yeah. Yeah.
10,000 people a day. So I'm proud of those numbers.
Awesome. So this will reach a lot of people, and that's a good thing. Obviously, I want this information to get it really out there, because people, they need hope, and they need to learn, and they need to be smart, and there's all kinds of things. I mean, like, other people have gotten into nutrition and da 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 da. There's a lot of things we have to do to keep these organs lasting longer, right?
Amen.
Medicine, this and that.
Well, is
But it
there?
was lovely talking to you, BJ. And so, where would this be? Like on a Spotify at some
Oh, it'll
point,
be on
or
Spotify, iHeartRadio. It'll
okay?
wherever. I always say wherever you get your favorite podcast, you can get the gift
There
of
we go.
life.
That's a
The
that's a
organ.
radio guy right there.
like I said, we would love to have you back, Sam, and I'm looking forward to that episode because
Great.
that's the side of it that I definitely could learn some more. So I'm looking forward to it. And maybe in the next.
We're all learning every day. We have to be open to learning. I learn every time I go. I mean, on Friday, I'm going to the OPO again, tomorrow, to do another session and help some new recruits. So they'll get to see. And, it really makes a difference for them because I'm not an actor. So most of the time, actors do these kind of things. And I'm an actual recipient who's been through it. So when I stand up there and say, hey, I'm a heart recipient, they like take a little second look. And as it turns out, April 20th is going to be my 10th year anniversary. So that's a big deal for me. I know you're all like way, way more, but
I'm almost
I'm
doubled
just,
you. Yeah, 22. I just celebrated.
exactly. You're 20.
I just celebrated 22.
You're 22, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And 22 is my favorite number because my wife, my brother, and I, we were all born on the 22nd. So, and we see 22 on every car, practically in the license plates.
Well, is there anything, that you'd want to, like we have a few minutes left before we let you go today. Anything else you definitely we missed?
Yeah.
Or
So
something
what I would like to say is self-advocation is a big thing. And, when you're in these illnesses and stuff, you're going to hospitals, don't take it at face value. Like, question your doctors, prep a little bit and listen to them and ask for another appointment if you haven't understood. Write it down, go take someone with you. Because a lot of times we have brain fog or it's just we can't think of the questions. Ask those things and ask again, seek second opinions, and don't just take it, because sometimes doctors, some have great interaction skills and bedside manners, but some not so much. And some of them have sorry to say, like a God complex too. So when they say, oh, your numbers are fine, ask again, like, what do you mean fine? What's fine? And what are my goals and targets? And I don't want to ever hear like, oh, it's borderline. Well, no, what? I mean, we all know how to read a LabCorp report with the orange, green, and red. But I mean, tell me more about it. Explain to me in layman's terms. I'm not a doctor, so I need to know what I have to do. So that advocacy parts as a patient is important. We need to be heard. And also the other thing is about I have to get the numbers down somehow. It's going to take much more than a miracle. And kidney illnesses and kidney transplant candidates and liver transplant candidates make up the bulk of the waiting list, and even in that waiting list, there's an active and inactive portion. So the point is, the more we can reduce that waiting list, it's just better for all of us. We're going to be saving many more lives. So living donation is key. We all as a society should focus more on that, educate more. It's hard to ask, understood. People don't like to ask their families or friends, but we have to, And sometimes if you don't ask, who knows how they feel? Like the potential donors feel like, hey, I couldn't even help. But if you ask and they get tested, guess what? They might find out they have something that they should have taken care of because of all the extensive testing. But also, if all goes well, they save your life. And these days there's options. You don't have to match on blood type only or whatever. You can donate somewhere else and you get a voucher and all this stuff. There's all kinds of details, People need to learn more about that, I believe, and then we'll be better off. We'll have a good transplant system. So that's what I'd like to say, and just go out there and register if you haven't. You can do it at the DMV. You can do it at donatelife.org, donatelife.net. There's all kinds of places. So thank you so much, BJ, and that's for allowing me to speak and sharing.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing your inspiring story. And be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode of Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. If you have a transplant story, email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you have a comment on the program, same email address, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, and also don't forget to like and share this episode. And we would appreciate that 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Another podcast you might enjoy is myself and my morning radio show partner, Bill Stevens. We pretty much talk about old guy stuff these days. But join BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.
He was running on empty, heart fading fast. Doctor said, man, you ain't gonna last. But a stranger's kindness, a gift so true, turned the night sky into something new. He got a second chance, he got a brand new spark. Like a freight train rolling back from the dark. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. 15 years later, the road got rough. The fight ain't over when the climb is tough. Needed a kidney, the race was on. Another hero stepped up, kept him strong. Every breath he takes is a tale of hope. One life saved, another can cope. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. Doctor's hands, a donor's grace, running on down to a brand new place. Second chances don't come twice, but when they do, man, they feel so nice. So let's spread the word, let the people know. One yesterday lets a miracle grow. You don't need wings just to save a man, just a little love, a helping hand. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. BJ still rocking, still standing tall, thanks to the ones who gave it all. Gift of life, hear the sound. Pass it on, pass it down. The Gift of Life podcast, hosted by BJ Odom. Listen now. Listen now.